Issue 50. Divorce.
Once upon a time, there was a bright young man who wanted to become rich and successful. So he studied very hard in college, got an MBA, and went to work in a prestigious firm. Since most successful businessmen in the land had beautiful wives, he went out and got himself one too. He bought her a lovely home in the suburbs. In return for beautiful clothes and elegant jewels, she was a dutiful wife who devoted herself to their children. She never saw much of her rich, successful husband, who worked long hours and stayed out late at night, sharing wine and expensive meals with potential clients in order to cultivate good connections. There were also rumors that he was seen dining with attractive women in the business world. Meanwhile, his wife was growing more lonely and disconnected day by day. Finally, after looking at the emptiness of her life, she decided to go back to college and find a career. After watching her husband, she knew she didn't want to be rich and successful. She was hungry for something much deeper and more meaningful. Something inside her awakened as she gained new knowledge. And one day in class, her eyes locked with those of a handsome man who was also looking for something that would give meaning to his life. He was tired of the demands of the business world and wanted true happiness and satisfaction. After a year of contemplation, she divorced her husband, who to this day remains baffled but busy, and married the nice man in her class. He became a good stepfather to her children, who were delighted to have a man to spend time with. And he always came home from work in time for the family dinner. They weren't rich, but they lived happily ever after.
Comprehension. 1. What did the wife do in return for the beautiful clothes and elegant jewels? 2. Did she and her husband often enjoy themselves together? Why or why not? 3. While she was alone at home, what did her husband do? 4. After examining her life, what did she want? 5. How long did she contemplate a divorce? 6. How did her children feel about their new father?
Let's talk. 1. Do you ever think of getting a divorce? Talk about situations in which you might consider one. 2. Why are people reluctant to file for divorce, even if they feel they have to? 3. Who is in a better position to take care of their children after a divorce, the mother or the father? 4. If your spouse had a love affair, would you get divorced or forgive the transgression? Or get even by having an affair of your own? 5. How could you tell if your spouse were having an affair? 6. How can society reduce the divorce rate? 7. If one of your family members or friends were getting a divorce, would you simply butt out or try to help save the marriage? 8. Who do you think should usually get child custody, the mom or the dad? What do you think should determine the issue? 9. It is said that many husbands and wives refuse to take care of their own children when divorced. Why is that?
Opinion samples. 1. It is true that divorces are too easy to get, but the real problem is that it is too easy to get married. I don't understand why so many people are in such a hurry. Are they afraid that if they don't get wedded at once, the fish will get away? I think if love is here to stay, it will be here today, tomorrow, next week, next month, or even next year. If people took a little more time to get to know each other before they married, there wouldn't be so many divorces. There should be a law that makes it mandatory to be officially engaged for at least 6 months. That means a couple should apply for a marriage license, and if they are still together 6 months later, they would be allowed to get married. This would certainly do a lot to knock down the horrendous number of divorces. I'm speaking from experience. If I had had to wait 6 more months, I would never have gotten married and would have avoided a very nasty divorce. Question: how can a long engagement help reduce the divorce rate?
2. My parents hated each other, but they stayed together because of their religious convictions. I wished every day of my childhood that they would get a divorce so we could have some peace. They fought about anything and everything, and then they'd take it out on us kids. They never hit each other, but they beat the daylights out of us. I have scars from broken bones that were not properly set. My appendix ruptured because I was too scared to mention the pain. Today, my parents are still together. 55 years of making each other miserable. I'd like to tell parents everywhere, don't stay with a mate you despise for religious reasons, or because splitting up would be hard on you financially. Your children would rather be poor and loved. Question: is it right to stay together, even for good reasons, when there is no love between a couple? Issue 50. Divorce.
Why can't two people stay together and be happy?
Some can, of course, but it's very difficult.
The people who get married are not the same people later on.
Yes, folks change at different rates and in different directions, but that is also true for the ones who stay happily married.
What is the main reason for breaking up, or for that matter, for staying together?
It's useless to generalize. For most people, communication is the key. If they can continue to empathize with one another and stay open to each other's moods and attitudes, they probably both get something out of their marriage that they cannot get anywhere else. But even good communicators may tire of each other, and even bad ones may stick it out to the end. People are not simple.
When is divorce the right answer? How can one know what is best?
It is always a personal decision. Emotions, feelings are a major part of the equation. But cold reason also has a role. Am I happy? Would I be happier if I were not married? Would I be happier being married to someone else? Who would take care of me if I were single? These are the kinds of questions one asks, and everyone reaches a different answer.
What other factors are relevant?
Besides individual concerns, society is extremely important. In many cultures, divorce is simply not permitted except under extreme conditions. Even then, when it is allowed, divorced people are pitied or condemned to social inferiority. Sometimes it is easy for men to break off a union, but difficult for women to do so. And, of course, divorce rates are soaring in most modern cultures. It is not unusual at all for people to be married 2 or 3 times.
Do married couples need to be faithful to make the marriage last?
Often it doesn't matter. Great philanderers may also be excellent mates and parents. Sometimes sexual variety helps keep a marriage from becoming stale. A few couples even agree to an open marriage, in which they do not even pretend to be monogamous, but stay together quite happily. What does not seem to work very well, though, is if one partner is carrying on an affair and the other one is adamantly opposed to such behavior. When the latter finds out about the infidelity, it is almost impossible to save the marriage.
What do you think about unmarried people living together?
When the practice first became widespread a few years back, it seemed like an excellent idea. The notion was that a man and a woman would learn what the other person was like before they got married, and if they were incompatible, they could separate rather easily. But the emotional attachment becomes just as strong in these cases, and it is often just as difficult to end the relationship as it is for married people to do so, though of course there are fewer legal entanglements, so that part is less complicated. One of the odd facts is that people who live together before getting married have even higher divorce rates than those who do not.
I suppose that's because they began the relationship without a real commitment and they never allowed one to develop.
Yes, or it may be that without some kind of binding obligation on each other, they both have had to work harder to make the other one happy. Once they get married, it is not as easy to just suddenly decide to leave. So they take each other for granted, and neither of them has to devote quite as much attention to the other.
Questions. 1. What seem to be the most ordinary components of a successful marriage? 2. Why do people decide to divorce? 3. What was the expectation about people who lived together before they got married? How did things turn out instead?